Ross Dellenger dropped a bombshell of an article last night that shows just where we are in college sports when it comes to governance and where the future of the sport is going. And it also, that along with some tweets that have been put out, also show that Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, the SEC, the Big Ten may not be able to get away with the power grab they are trying to do over college sports. There will be pushback. There is already pushback. So they better be careful just how far they go. What is up, and welcome to this live edition of Couz's Corner. This lunchtime live edition here on this Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day. I want to start off by saying, thank you to all those who gave their life for this country. That's who we celebrated over this past weekend. Those who made the ultimate sacrifice, the true heroes that have lived among us and who died for our freedoms. Thanks to them, and the last weekend was a weekend we can celebrate with family, but also do it in remembrance of those people. So thank them for their sacrifices. But yeah, this article by Ross Dellenger last night, I really didn't even know what direction to go. And yes, I do have a broken finger. That's what I get for doing physical labor. I was doing some landscaping over the weekend, apparently broke my finger in the process. And that is slowing me down a lot on typing and doing things I need to do, which includes getting ready for this show. So I apologize for being late. But man, I didn't even know which direction to take this really, because there's so much to unpack in this article. Then some tweets came out, not only by Greg Sankey, but from others. And there were a couple snippets of the article that I thought really showed that I don't think the Big 12, the ACC, Notre Dame, and others are just going to sit back and let the Power 2 run roughshod over college sports. And there are also forces outside of college sports that may not allow it either, at the federal level and even others. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you my thoughts on some of this in this episode. I'm not going to read the entire Ross Dellenger article. I will leave a link to it in the description box. I'm only going to cover the high spots, what I consider the highlights, and the pieces that I think were sort of the biggest takeaways for me from this article. Others have already done shows on this. Greg Flugar, the guys over at College Football Mafia, John Kurtz. You can go watch all their stuff too. They all did a great job covering it. But before I get into the show, though, I do have to give a quick shout out to my sponsor. I'll be right back. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians, because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. Thank you for being patient, letting me get through the housekeeping. Thanks to Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner for supporting what we do. Also, thanks to the fine folks over at Appalachia Digital, the folks who designed my brand new website, wvsportschat.com. They did a fantastic job. If you have a new website or want to start a new website, go check them out, appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Or if you have a site and want to help it get found more on Google, they will help with that as well. Mowing After Dark, what is up? Sankey swept the leg. I like the comment. Thank you for the comment. Yeah, he did. He definitely swept the leg, Mullen. You got that right, brother. But let's go ahead and first let's talk about the article, and then I'll give my thoughts as we go, kind of react to it. But the highlights of the article I wanted to point out were this first part. It says, now the college football playoff kind of is the main topic here, but there's also some other things. This during their meetings last week in Los Angeles, Big Ten administrators solidified their support for the so-called 4-4-2-2-1 format. 4 AQs for the SEC and Big Ten, and 2 for the ACC and Big 12, 1 for the group of 5. That would also include 3 at-large bids. This week, the SEC has a chance to do the same. And what if they do? Here's a quote from a Big 12 athletic director. I guess we're going to war. So they're not going to take this lying down. Now, the problem with that is they've already granted power to the SEC and Big Ten to oversee future formatting of the college football playoff. That's a problem. It's a problem I think should have never happened. I don't think they ever should have given that power away. I think it was a huge mistake. And now the chickens are going to come home to roost, as they say here in West Virginia, and they're liable to pay for doing that, for that decision. So one Big 12 AD says they're prepared to go to war over this seeding model. They do not want that 4-4-2-2-1 model, because that's like saying, hey, we're only half as good as the Big 12 or Big 10 and SEC. And even though in past recent years that's been true to a degree, you don't want to put it on paper, and you don't want to give them that much. You don't want to give that much away, even because they've already taken so much. They already have so much more. They're already getting so much more of the revenue. You don't want to give them even more authority, right? Because more teams equals even more revenue. Because for every team the league gets in, they get paid for it. So it's a huge unfair advantage for those two leagues. He says at the center of this brewing battle is a memorandum of understanding that the 11-member CFP governing board, the 10 FBS conferences, and Notre Dame authorized last spring. The document grants format decision-making power starting in 2026 to the SEC and Big Ten, a move to keep the two Goliaths from separating to form their own playoff, which they may even end up doing anyway. That's the reason I think they should have never done it. It says, according to most who have viewed the memorandum, the agreement grants the Big Ten and SEC control over the format, but directs them to have, quote, meaningful consultation, end quote, and collect input from other non-conferences and TV partner ESPN, from other conferences, and ESPN. Have they satisfied the agreement's language to hold meaningful consultation? Some do not believe so and have sought legal counsel over the validity of the document. So we heard the Big 12 AD say that they would go to war if they do the 4-4-2-2-1 model. Now, apparently, that some of these leagues have went as far as to seek legal counsel to see if that memorandum of understanding granting the Big Ten and SEC that much power has any validity. Does it have any footing? Does it even matter? Does it have any weight? They're already questioning that decision and seeking legal counsel to help with that. There's pushback. There's part of the pushback. They could get sued if they decide to go that route. They may want to think twice about it, or they may end up in court. They're in court enough right now. They don't need more lawsuits, right? They're already dealing with the House settlement and all this other crap that's out there involving college sports. Let's keep going. It says the SEC's decision on format is a pivotal step that may ignite a chain of moves within the conference itself. With 4 guaranteed spots in the postseason, SEC administrators are more willing to add a 9th conference football game, eventually strike a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten, and remake the conference championship weekend with on-campus play-in games pitting their 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th place finishers against one another for their final 2 CFP automatic spots. Those things likely won't occur if the 4-4-2-2-1 model does not get passed, which will what? Cost the SEC even more money. That's why they're wanting to do this. It's why Tony Petitti, who actually is the original person who proposed this model, Tony Petitti's sitting back not saying a word, letting Greg Sankey be the bad guy here, be mouthpiece for this, when it was actually his idea. But there are other playoff formats in consideration, including a 16-team bracket with a single qualifier for each power conference champion and the best group of 6 champion, plus 11 at-large bids. A concept supported by the Big 12 and ACC, and one that Sankey has kept in the conversation. Why has he kept it in the conversation? Because when you look at the data, which Brett McMurphy shared and others have shared on Twitter, when you look at the data, the SEC would have averaged almost 5 teams per year in a 16-team format based on past rankings. So with the 4 automatic qualifiers, SEC in a lot of years could actually have less spots in the playoff going by that model than they would in just a straight seeding model where the top 11 teams get the at-larges, plus the conference champions. And the Big 12 and ACC, by the way, the Big 12 and ACC could potentially be hurting themselves by going to that model because they would be guaranteed 2 spots with the other model being proposed. And in this model, they would average 2 spots, but a lot of years may only get 1. So is it really beneficial to the Big 12 to do a 11 at-large model? Maybe not, but it's best for the sport. It's best for college football. It's best for us fans. And you earn your way in the way it's supposed to be. And the SEC and Big Ten are still going to get more teams in most years than the other leagues. The problem they have, and their presidents might have, is they would miss out on this opportunity for the play-in games. They would not have incentive to do that anymore. They would not have an incentive to play the Big Ten and SEC. They wouldn't have an incentive to play each other in non-conference games because they wouldn't want to make their schedule that much harder, right? If you've got the automatic qualifiers, you can play a tough schedule and your top 4 teams still get in, right? And you make more money from the TV revenue, from the TV piece of it. So I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised if the SEC and Big Ten go with the 11 at-large model. The one thing that might keep them from doing the automatic qualifier model is the pressure that could be mounting from a PR perspective and even potentially a legal perspective, which I mentioned once already. And there could also be heat coming from the federal side of this thing, which I'll talk to in a minute. With the 4-4-2-2-1 format, there is a risk of alienating a large swath of college football fan bases, triggering unwanted intervention from congressional lawmakers, and adversely impacting relationships with the 2 other conferences, talking about the Big 12 and the ACC. In Destin this week, SEC administrators are expected to examine the governor's proposal and the possibility of separating football completely out from under the NCAA. This is another big bombshell in this article. During its spring meetings last week, the Big Ten swung its support for doing just that, bifurcating football governance. In an unreported and little-known fact, SEC presidents in March quietly authorized their commissioner, Sankey, to split from the NCAA if he deems that the right move. So Greg Sankey has the power, if he thinks it's the best move for his conference, to separate from the NCAA. So the great breakaway of the Big Ten and SEC could be happening already. Or could it be a breakaway of all 4 power leagues from the NCAA? That's possible too. The ACC and Big 12 are not totally innocent in all this. They are also trying to wield their power around what little bit they have. They're trying to take advantage of that as well. It says in an unreported, I've already covered that. It says there are gripes over the NCAA's new governance proposal from both the power leagues, who believe that the 65% authority they've been given is not enough, and many of the other 28 Division I conferences who believe that the 65% is too much. So you've got the SEC and Big Ten going at it with the other two power leagues. You also have the 4 power leagues battling it out with all the other Division I conferences on governance. Do they get 65% of the power? Do they get more of the power? They're wanting 68%. So that only 3 of the 4 power leagues need to approve something for it to become the rule. Whereas if it's 65%, if they only have 65% control, all 4 power leagues would have to approve based on the weighted model. So that only 3, it may only sound like 3%, but it's a big difference. It's a big difference. It says at least 3 commissioners of non-FBS conferences have publicly criticized the model, at least one of them fearing that the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, and ACC will use their voting block to restructure the men's basketball tournament, which, to be honest, they probably will, which is the NCAA's only real moneymaker, by impacting automatic qualifiers and revenue payouts for the lower leagues. Which, again, at the end of the day, what's this all going to lead to? It will lead to Olympic sports being cut from athletic departments across the country, which will do what? Hurt the United States' ability to perform and compete in the Olympics. It wouldn't surprise me if the U.S. Olympic Committee don't at some point get involved in these conversations, if they haven't already behind the scenes. U.S. Olympic Committee, step up, make your voice heard. Let the powers that be in college sports know how critical All of this stuff could be on your Olympic sports and on the United States' ability to get medals and compete in the Olympics. We need these athletes in colleges to be participating in Olympic sports because that's what feeds the Olympic teams in a lot of cases. Now, let's talk about the other pushback, the federal pushback. There was a tweet that came out. First off, Greg Sankey put out he spoke to the media last night as they kick off the SEC meetings this week in Destin, and he had some very interesting comments, including taking a jab at the ACC and Big 12. I don't really want to get into that too much because that's not really the point of the show. But here's what he said, just to let you know what he said for those of you who may not have X. He says, I don't lecture others about good of the game. Coordinated press releases about good of the game. I'm looking for ideas to move us forward. Now, what he's talking about are two quotes where ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips and Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark came out last week when they agreed to the straight seeding model for the 2025 playoffs. They both came out with quotes that were very similar, and they both said basically, and I'm paraphrasing, that this decision did not really benefit our respective league, but we did it for the good of the game. And one even went on to say, we expect others, or we hope others will do the same in the future. Greg Sankey did not like that quote, and he fired back and fired a barb at those two for making that statement. Now, even though technically the Big 12 and ACC never really did press releases, official press releases, they were quotes from their commissioners to the media. But Sankey had a lot of other very interesting things to say. He played the victim in a few cases, whined some like he always does. But nonetheless, there was a tweet put out last night as well, at 7:14 p.m. on May 26th by Congressman Brendan Boyle, who's from the Philadelphia area. He says this: let me state this as clearly as I can. The Big Ten and SEC should be very, very careful about some of the decisions they are about to make because they appear hell-bent on ruining major college football. I think they need congressional hearings into their collusion. So that's Congressman Brendan Boyle from the Philadelphia area, which is close to Penn State, which is in one of those conferences. But Brendan Boyle has been outspoken before that he doesn't think the Big Ten and SEC need to wield all their power because it's not good for college sports, and he's doing it again. He's saying, hey, they better be careful because they're hell-bent on ruining college football. And by the way, he's an alum of Notre Dame who is on the side of the Big 12 and ACC in most of these arguments. For obvious reasons, they are a member of the ACC in most of their sports, and they are tethered to them in football, and they don't want to lose that. Even though the college football playoff model that's been presented, the 4-4-2-2-1-3, would guarantee them a spot if they're ranked in the top 16, they don't want to see the ACC damaged in any way because that would hurt them in the long run. And it's possible. I'm not real confident in this, but it's possible that they actually want what's best for college sports. But again, I doubt that's the case. I think they want what's best for the ACC because that's in their best interest. And Congressman Brendan Boyle is an alum of Notre Dame, so he's looking out in their best interest as well. Now, that's the pushback. So Greg said they're facing pushback not only from the power leagues, the other two power leagues, they're facing pushback from Notre Dame. They're facing pushback from the other G6 conferences. They're facing pushback from fans. They're even facing pushback from federal legislators now. They could potentially be facing lawsuits, as some of these power leagues have now looked into this memorandum of understanding that, hey, where we gave the Big Ten and the SEC this power, does that really hold any weight? Does that memorandum of understanding, is it valid? So much pushback coming their way potentially. I want to thank all of you for joining the show real quick. Reminder to please hit the thumbs up button, whether you're watching this live, whether you're watching on the replay. Please hit the thumbs up. Thanks to those of you who are watching on X. I ask that once you finish watching on X, please come over to my YouTube channel and subscribe over there if you haven't yet. If you're just now finding out about Couz's Corner, I'm on my way to 10,000 subs over on YouTube. Just celebrated 2.7 million views total on the channel. It's a huge milestone. I appreciate everybody's support for getting me there. I want to continue the progress. I cover West Virginia Mountaineers and any news that surrounds the Big 12 Conference and the other Big 12 teams here on the channel. So let's move in now to another interesting part of this article where it talks about the Big 12 and the ACC and private capital. But before we do, let's see if I can get to some comments here. Let me see. Got VIP member Daniel Gigax in the house. Says, hi, Couz. Got Browns and Beers in the house, who's also a VIP member. Says, appreciate the midday content, Couz. I appreciate the support. And I know a lot of people probably can't watch because they're at work, and I'm at work too, but I work from home, so I'm taking a few minutes to do this. Denny Allen says, let them step away. I'm not sure that doing so won't be an overstep. May not work out as well as they think, but this situation is so volatile. Who knows? And that's it for me, the uncertainty. I agree, Denny. I'm at the point now, I wasn't here before, but I'm at the point now where I think it may actually be better for everybody else if the SEC and Big Ten do their own thing, do step away. So they can quit throwing their weight around, quit throwing their power around, and they can just go do their own. They think they're so much better than everybody else, then go do it. Go prove it. See what happens. I think it's time they put their money where their mouth is, and I think it's time everybody else says, go for it, big boy. Go do your own thing. Alienate half the country, if not more. See where that gets you. A lone redwood tree in the house. Stephen Vitt in the house. Says the SEC and Big Ten can kick rocks. We got Mowing After Dark, who says Notre Dame could strengthen the ACC, just become a full member. That's a fair point. If Notre Dame really wants to do what's best for the ACC, they would join the ACC full time, would they not? You think the ACC TV deal wouldn't be more profitable, be worth more money with Notre Dame as a full member of the league? You might even get ESPN to renegotiate that deal before the negotiating window comes up in about, 8-9 years from now? Thank you for the super chat, Mullen. He says, Notre Dame only cares about Notre Dame. They use the ACC just like they did the Big East. I agree, Mullen. And there was a part of me at one time that wanted the Big 12 to somehow, some way, make some kind of deal with Notre Dame, kind of like they have with the ACC. But the more I thought about it, and then when I see all the issues that's going on with the ACC, all the uncertainty there, all the chaos behind the scenes that has been reported or at least rumored by some, I'm like, man, it seems like everywhere Notre Dame goes, chaos and problems follow. As far as being attached to a league, partially attached to a league. So maybe it's best not to align yourself with Notre Dame unless they are a full member of your conference. So, Moen, you got a great point. And I look, at this point, college sports has gotten to the point now, everybody's looking out for everybody. You've got conferences looking out for themselves. Then behind the scenes, behind that, you have individual teams, individual programs, schools trying to look out for themselves and maybe make deals behind the scenes, which kind of segues into the next thing I wanted to talk about. And that is this part of the article where Ross goes on to talk about private capital. He says the divide among the power leagues is more evident than ever. The latest example was a recent clandestine call. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, clandestine means basically secretive. A secret call that several ACC and Big 12 school presidents and high-ranking athletic administrators held with leaders of a private equity-backed super league. Now, it didn't say all schools. It said several ACC and Big 12 schools, presidents, and high-ranking athletic administrators. So you have some schools in the Big 12 and some schools in the ACC coming together for a secret meeting, a secret call, rather, earlier this month that was had without the involvement of ACC and Big 12 commissioners, the article goes on to say. and was the second such Big 12 ACC joint meeting since December, with those from Smash Capital, a venture capital firm proposing a Super League model that features a $9 billion promise of cash infusion to college sports. So that got me thinking, is there actually a divide inside the Big 12 and inside the ACC regarding private capital? Now, we've heard Greg Pfluger talk on his show that that's not the case, that all Big 12 schools are now on board, at least with how far they're willing to go with private capital. I guess we'll find out how much of his reporting was accurate on that. But this almost makes it sound like there are some schools in the Big 12 holding these meetings on their own. Is that true? I don't know. Maybe these schools are just going and representing the Big 12 and bringing what they hear back to the league, back to the other teams. Or is there actually a divide? Are there actually teams in the Big 12 and teams in the ACC who could be looking to do their own private capital deal outside of their conferences, of their respective conferences? Could we see the top teams from the Big 12 and the top teams from the ACC merge and form a whole new conference? Now, I don't think that's what's happening here. I don't think that's the road we're going down, but I think we have teams who are keeping all options on the table because they don't know what the future holds, and they have to look out for themselves. You know, we've heard about the divide in the SEC where you've got teams like Tennessee having with state laws passed where they wouldn't be able to enforce the house settlement law in their state. So you've got other teams in the SEC fighting against that, trying to get teams to sign on an agreement, say, hey, we agree to abide by all of the house settlement rules outside of our state law. So you've got even battles among each other in their own conferences, man. College sports, it appears at least, based on the reporting that's out there, is complete chaos. How do they rein it in? We've got to have some federal legislation. That's the only thing that's going to help us right now. But here's the thing with private capital. Yes, the ACC's looking into it. We all know Brett Yormark, he even made a statement a few days ago saying, hey, I don't want to read that some other conference has got a private capital deal done before we do. He wants to be the first league to get it done. He said that. He leaked that information. Or somebody did. So we know Brett Yormark and the Big 12 is looking at private equity, private capital. But according to this article by Ross Dellenger, the ACC and Big 12 schools are not alone in their foray into this world. While they are against these Super League ideas, both the SEC and the Big Ten are exploring a private equity or private capital infusion. Now, Greg Sankey had come out in the past and spoken against this. Apparently, he's changing his tune because that's what the school presidents want. It says Big Ten administrators received presentations last week at their spring meetings from 4 firms jockeying to purchase a piece of the conference. Could the Big Ten actually sell off a piece of their conference? That would be mind-boggling. Then it says SEC officials are using Goldman Sachs, a multinational investment bank and financial services company, to further examine the concept. Then it goes on to say even the richest need financial help. And that's why it's important for the Big 12 to be first in line there. Because if you let the SEC and Big Ten get ahead of you in a private capital deal, they're going to get a better deal than you are. They're going to separate themselves even more from where you are. That doesn't help you in any way. So the Big 12 needs to jump on this private capital deal, and they need to do it now, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I don't think they have a choice at this point. How else are they going to get an infusion of money into their league? Huh? They can't. I don't see any other way around it. We've got Shaggy of WV in the house says it is a complete mess. A lone redwood tree says ACC, Big 12, G6 take most of the country and say enough is enough. Reinstate fair rankings instead of ESPN's SEC favoritism. Reinstate fair playoff seeding. I like it, a lone redwood tree. Great comment. And you're absolutely right. Everybody else needs to say enough is enough. Make the Big 10 and SEC walk the talk. Make them put their words into action. And if they're going to threaten to leave, say, hey, big boy, there's the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out. bye-bye. See you later. Take your arrogance, your hubris, and go somewhere else with it because we don't need it here. We can do just fine on our own. Now, maybe that would be terrible for everybody in the end. I don't know, but at some point, something's got to give. I don't think it'll come to that. I don't think that'll ever, I think, again, we might see the Power Four break away from the NCAA as far as governance goes. But I don't think the SEC and Big Ten are going to break away on their own, at least from a governance perspective. But the problem is, are things really as bad as they seem behind closed doors? Maybe when these four get together in meetings, meaning Yormark, Phillips, Petiti, and Sankey, maybe when they get together in meetings, it's all kumbaya, holding hands. I don't know. And maybe they're just doing all this publicly, jockeying for position through the media. I don't know. I have had people send me DMs telling me that, things aren't as chaotic as they seem. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I do trust Ross Dellenger's reporting. He seems to be on top of these things. So it does seem to be chaotic. Little Knives says, with PE, you need future prospective investments. That's the thing with the private capital that they're looking at. The private capital firms would actually help the league find those investments. They would actually partner with the league and help them earn more revenue. They would actually utilize their relationships with potential sponsors and things like that to help bring the league more money. And the private capital deal that's been proposed, at least it was reported on, with Redbird Capital in the Big 12 was, hey, we're not going to buy ownership in the league. What we're going to do is we will take a percentage of any additional revenue you earn. So they're not taking anything off the top. They're only taking profits from additional revenue that's brought in, and they will help you earn that revenue. So it's a complete partnership. It's not them buying a part of the league. It's a partnership agreement. Now, there are other ways they can do it. They could buy a portion of the league, have an ownership stake in it. They could do that, but I don't think that's the direction they're going to go. Daniel Gigax says he thinks the Big Ten can listen to other people. The SEC, no way. Here's my take on it, Daniel, and maybe I'm completely wrong. I think the Big Ten is just as arrogant, has just as much hubris, and is equally responsible for moving college sports in the direction it's going, especially the college football playoff. But they don't say it out loud. They do everything behind closed doors. I think Greg Sankey just doesn't care to be the one. He doesn't mind being the one out front. He may kind of like it. He might kind of like the conflict. He might kind of like the attention. And he likes doing things. He doesn't mind doing things out in the open. Whereas I think the Big Ten and Tony Petitti do it behind closed doors. But I think they're equally guilty, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm wrong. But, look what Kevin Warren in the Big Ten did, stabbing, the Alliance in the back. Now, Sankey did something similar to Bob Bowlesby in the Big 12 by taking Oklahoma and Texas. So I don't trust him either. And yes, he does seem to speak out of both sides of his mouth. He talks about what's good for the sport and what's good for everybody, but yet he doesn't seem to act on that. But guess what? That's because his school presidents, he has to follow their lead and do what they want him to do. He works for them. So the hubris and the arrogance is inside the league at the leadership level, at the schools. BYU football says Couz with the public backlash now, if the Big Ten and SEC went on their own, would be a failure on day one. The only time we hear Petiti talk is when Skanky is holding his hand. It's a fair point. Yeah, I think it would be absolute a PR nightmare if they tried to break away and do this on their own. I really do. J. Rod says this will not end well. Stephen Vitt says Big Ten SEC never cared about the G6 throughout this process, so why should the G6 care back? Fair point. Little Knife said maybe there should be an AFC, NFC model, P2, and ACC Big 12 G5. Might work. Daniel Gigak says trust no one, and you're exactly right, Daniel. RT says, I would hope a breakaway would be short-lived, but who knows? Denny Allen says, I believe if they do break away, the true college football fans that do not follow these 32 teams will not watch their games at all. They will boycott and see a dramatic decrease in viewership. And I think we may see some of that already. In this, it'll be now. Look, their viewership numbers, the Ohio States of the world, their viewership numbers are so freaking good. It ain't gonna matter to them that much. I don't think. Now it might matter to the networks. That's who it's going to matter to. It's going to matter to the networks. But I've said before. I don't know if maybe it was on this show, but maybe on somebody else's. But I think fans of Big 12, ACC, and G6 teams should stop watching SEC and Big 10 football. If you are a diehard fan of a team in any of those leagues, the G6, or the Big 12 or the ACC, you should, even if you're a Notre Dame fan, unless your team is playing one of those teams, don't watch it. Let's see what happens then. If every college football fan that is not a fan of one of those teams stops watching their games, it has to make a difference. Does it not? Wouldn't it make a difference? Let's just stop watching them. Watch the Big 12. Watch the ACC. Watch the G6. Watch Maction, baby. Don't watch Alabama, Tennessee. Don't watch Mississippi State, Georgia. Don't watch Purdue, Illinois. Don't watch Ohio State, Michigan, even. Yes, those are great games, and they're fun to watch. But I don't know what else. What else can we do as fans to let them know we've had enough of this crap? We've got to stop watching the games. That's the only thing we can do. We've got to stop watching the games. Or people like me can get on here and shout it to the rooftops. Not sure who's going to care about that. I don't know what else we can do. If we want to do our part, we have to just do it with our pocketbooks, which in this case is our eyeballs. Steve Moser says the neighborhood kids won a 5A state title recently. They were ecstatic. Nobody was saying, oh, well, this isn't as big of a deal since it isn't 6A. That's a great point, Steve. And that's what I've said, too. I had a debate with this with somebody else not long ago, and they said that they felt like if West Virginia ever got relegated and was not part of the quote-unquote, was not in the same table, so to speak, as the Big Ten and SEC, that he would stop watching it. I said, why? I wouldn't. Winning a championship against, let's just say the ACC and the Big 12 do their own thing, even outside, even throw the G6 in there. How would winning a championship among all those teams not still be valuable? NFL only has 32 teams, right? Being the best team out of all those 32 means something. Being the best team of the ACC and Big 12 should mean something, because you're going up against 32 other teams, or 34 in this case, whatever it is, whatever the number is. And if you throw the G6 in, it's even more. You're looking at about 198 to 100 teams, somewhere in that range, right? That would mean something, would it not? So I wouldn't stop watching my West Virginia Mountaineers if they now will their TV deals be as good? Maybe not, but it's not going to matter, because you're going to be competing against your peers anyway. You won't have to worry about keeping up with the Joneses, which in this case is the Big Ten and SEC. You only have to keep up with the Smiths, which would be the ACC and the Big 12. I wouldn't stop watching it. To me, it's just as valuable. I mean, how often do West Virginia? How often does an ACC team? Now, I know outside of rivalry games, I know you've got the Florida State-Florida rivalry and others. In West Virginia's case, yes, they played Penn State last 2 years. They do have Alabama coming up on the schedule for a couple of years, and then they have a game against Tennessee. But I mean, these are one off or two offs. They're not happening year in, year out. They're playing teams in their conference. They're playing, Pitt or Virginia Tech, a rivalry, and from the ACC, and they're playing G5s and FCS teams. And I still love to watch the games every week. I still go to the games. Yes, was the Penn State game exciting? Yes, it was. Until it actually took place on the field. But you see my point. I'm not going to stop watching or going to games just because they don't play the SEC and Big Ten. I mean, to me, it wouldn't change much, in my opinion, from where we are now. From a fan perspective, so I'm not sure why fans get hung up on, well, we've got to be included. We've got to be included at the big boy table, right, in the conversation. Why? Because we're really not anyway. Rock and Rant in the house. Thank you, Rock and Rant, for the super chat. He says, this is what happens when you give up the power under duress to two conferences. Don't think college can be like high school, though, would seem junior. It's fair, Rock and Rant. It is fair. I don't know. Maybe I'm naive. Would it feel the same? Probably not, but let's be real. I'm just going to be real. The chances of West Virginia ever winning a national championship are extremely, extremely thin. Now, Rich Rod is adamant that they can. That doesn't mean they will, but he thinks they can. And they've been really close on two different occasions. But in the modern era, well, in my lifetime, but under these new conditions, this new landscape with NIL, the transfer portal, the rich getting richer, I just don't know if West Virginia will ever compete for a national championship again. They might make the playoffs, but winning the national championship, I just think it's a long shot. And I don't, so why, at least in that, they would be able to win the championship of whatever that tier 2 is, right? It's better than nothing. Maybe I'm wrong. Am I the only fan who feels that way? I'd be anxious to see. And I understand, Rock and Rant, you're a guy who cheers for Miami. You probably don't feel that way because Miami has won more national championships. They've been relevant. They were one of the greatest teams for a couple decades there, at least a decade, maybe the best team in college football. So I get it. You might have a different view on it than me. Rock and Rant says the difference, you would be leaving something versus always having been that way like high school is. And I have thought about that side of it. That it would hurt initially. The initial shock of it would suck. It would, because it would feel like you just got relegated. You just got kicked to the curb. You're not, you got picked last, you got picked last on the playground for kickball, whatever. That's what it would feel like. I get it. It would suck. But I think over time we would grow accustomed to it and it would still be fun. That's after 1, 2, 3 years of it. Really, after that first season, I think you'd grow accustomed to it and it'd be normal. Shaggy of WV says, I think the fans of individual teams don't care what division they are in. They just want to win. Did Marshall fans care that Marshall wasn't in Division I back when they won their 1AA titles? And that's obviously a question for a Marshall fan, but probably not. They still celebrated those titles, and it was still fun for them to experience it, right? I don't like 12-9 games. Boring. We need a new national championship. Let the snobs have their separate national championship. We don't need their boring kind of football anyways. Says Drumwell 62. All right. I appreciate everybody jumping on. Hopefully you enjoyed this live show, this early afternoon live show. I've got to get back to work. I am working from home today. Yes, for those of you who are wondering, I did break my finger over the weekend doing some landscaping. It's a first world problem. I'll be fine. Just, I type. My job requires me to type. Obviously, preparing for YouTube videos requires me to type, so I'm having to do more hunting and pecking again, which I do not like. So that is a challenge. But other than that, I'll be fine. It will heal. Broken fingers are not that big of a deal. They're pretty common. But I figured some of you may be wondering, because I do like to talk with my hands, and I'm sure you've seen this. That's what it is. I went and got me a splint. I didn't go to the doctor because I don't think there's much they do for a broken finger anyway. I went and got me a splint. I've been wearing it as much as possible to try to keep my finger going back the right way. But yeah, it's more of a nuisance than anything, honestly. The pain's not that bad, just a nuisance. Moen, thank you, brother, for jumping on. By the way, Moen is one of the co-hosts of the College Football Mafia show. They have shows on pretty much every night of the week. Go check them out, College Football Mafia. They did a great job covering this on a show last night. Kudos to them. I did not have a chance to. Well, I didn't do a show last. I kind of took some time off over the weekend caught my breath. And, this news broke kind of late. I wasn't really in a position to do a show at that time. So I said, you know what? I'll just do one tomorrow. Plus, it gave me the opportunity to check out all these tweets that came out and get some different perspectives. So sometimes waiting is the best way anyway, because you get more. For me, it gives me more of a time to wrap my head around a situation and think about it. You know what I mean? Instead of jumping right in and doing a show, which is cool, which I do like to do when I can. But sometimes if you sit back and wait, I hear other people's perspectives on it, like Mullen and those guys, or Greg's, or I read more articles about it, like I did this morning over at CBS Sports and some other places. And I can wrap my head around exactly the direction I want to go with the show and gather my thoughts more. So sometimes I prefer to do that instead of just jumping on and trying to be the first one out the gate. But anyway, hats off to Mullen and the guys at College Football Mafia. Hats off to Greg and the other shows that have covered this well. John Kurtz, like I mentioned earlier. Thanks again to my channel sponsors, Katz, Kenner, Stone, Shooter, Buckner, Attorneys at Law, your personal injury and medical malpractice attorneys in the state of West Virginia and Virginia. And then the fine folks at Appalachia Digital, who designed my new website, wvsportschat.com. Check them out for your new website, or if you want to get found easier on Google, go to appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Let them help you and let them know I sent you. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope the rest of your day or night is top shelf. Hit the like button on your way out, please, and cue Country Roads.